As humans, our character is really heavily gauged by how we regulate our emotions, and moreover, how we respond to situations in which these emotions get pushed to their limits. I would argue that within our lives, there is no greater test of one's emotions than loss. We don't live forever, and sometimes someone we care about slips from our grasp, falling through our fingers like sand. The most important consideration at these times is, have you loved enough? Did you make your feelings clear? And most importantly, what is it that is stopping you? The person I want to use as my example is, in my opinion, a really powerful representation of how we're shaped not only by what we've lost, but also how we've loved. And that person is Jotaro Kujo from JOJO'S Bizarre Adventure. Jotaro is the epitome of the strong silent type. He doesn't fit the mould of the standard mouthy shonen protagonist, and he's very much a closed book in most regards. Despite this, he has no shortage of strength and integrity, fitting really tightly into the trope of being the good-hearted delinquent. I imagine this principled and firm personality stemmed from a combination of Jotaro's absent father and his innocent and light-hearted mother. Knowing Holly is selfless and would do anything for the well-being of her family, Jotaro feels the need to step up as the custodian of his family in order to preserve her wholesome nature, knowing that she is easily exploited. This is why Jotaro has such an aversion to people who are weak-willed or lack any kind of independent principles, as for him, being this way is such a crucial necessity to care for the people he's surrounded by. The concept of a weak mind is infuriating to him. He's a really potent example of unspoken love, favouring action as opposed to words. It's far easier to encode your actions with your intentions, as often they involve you making a far more conscious effort compared to words, which are significantly more susceptible to emptiness and dishonesty. But I definitely think this is also a place where Jotaro really falls down as a character. To him, internal strength and fortitude are so integral to his existence that entertaining the idea of lowering that barrier is an impossibility. His reluctance to use words is simply a rejection of the fact that they are a portal to unreliability and are often a tool utilised by people who lack conviction and intention to carry out their promises. What I really think is that Jotaro is deathly afraid of weakness. Jotaro heavily lacks any sense of self-compassion and is a prisoner of his own stoicism. To indulge one's emotions means to become vulnerable, and in the eyes of the strong-willed principled man such as Jotaro, vulnerability is a weakness. His strict principles are essentially his way of self-checking to ensure that he is maintaining this standard of strength. Stoicism is very often misinterpreted and as such is really exhausting. Jotaro is a good example of the malpractice of stoicism, of how he's actually repressing instead of empathising with his own suffrage. After the losses of Avdol, Iggy and Kakyoin during part 3, all that was reinforced for him is that he has to be stronger if he hopes to save anyone else. As cruel as it sounds, they all died simply because they were not strong enough. Avdol's wisdom failed him, Iggy's courage failed him, Kakyoin's strategy failed him. All that a 17-year-old Jotaro can take away from this is that he needs to be stronger. Don't get me wrong, Jotaro did just that. He became stronger and overcame Dio in the climax of Stardust Crusaders, but there is a fine line between soldiering on and actually healing from your wounds. Loss is both a creator and a destroyer. The agony we feel from loss is that sensation of a crucial piece being pulled from our existence, a pillar that without their support, all we can do is crumble. But it's through the rubble of grief that we are presented with a new opportunity to rebuild ourselves into a monument that commemorates what we've lost. Jotaro's appearance in Diamond is Unbreakable is what I believe to be him in that construction phase. The remnants of his trauma are still prevalent, but there are clear signs that those who he has lost still walk beside him. It's easy to overlook, but the moment where Josuke and Jotaro have a small fight at the beginning of the part is actually a really strong symbol of Jotaro's growth. It's the first time we see him attempt diplomacy instead of attempting to bulldoze through the situation with strength. It's just a small indicator that he has refined his delinquent personality to that of a more responsible adult. Even as he unveils Star Platinum, its frame is more slender, showing that in his soul, his drive to muscle through has since diminished into something more delicate. For me, Part 4 appeared like a second chance for Jotaro. With an increase in stand users and an arch enemy wielding the power of the arrow, this feels like Part 3 all over again. With Morio, Jotaro was given a do-over, a chance to step in and save Josuke and his friends from the same fate as the Stardust Crusaders. A reaffirmation for Jotaro's survivor's guilt, proof that Avdo, Iggy and Kakyoin's sacrifices weren't in vain, that Jotaro survived not only to defeat Dio, but to continue as a warrior to defend the weak. This is what it means to rebuild yourself in the legacy of those who have departed from you, to shoulder their strength and desire to continue unto yourself, to assimilate their traits so that their existence can continue to serve purpose long after they are but dust. Avdol's cool-headed wisdom, Kakyoin's quick-thinking strategy, Iggy's tenaciousness, and most importantly, their united desire to use their power against tyranny. All of these are characteristics that Jotaro has taken onto himself in a mark of respect for the comrades that fought beside him. He's made leaps and bounds when it comes to his own personal maturity, but we're also still seeing that emotional and social withdrawal from the Castle Diamond is unbreakable. I think deep down, he's still intimidated by the concept of emotional investment because of the imminent threat, fearing that once again any display of vulnerability may go brutally punished. Jotaro has encased himself in a paradoxical situation in which he requires proximity in order to convey his feelings through action, yet requires distance as his past trauma prevents him from wanting to entertain any sort of closeness. Jotaro can end up being quite relatable in this regard. It's universally recognised that openness and acknowledgement of your feelings requires an element of vulnerability, and unfortunately for many, they've existed in circumstances which opening themselves up in that way has left them wide open for attack. There's this incessant notion that emotional vulnerability and weakness are synonymous. However, to be open is to put yourself at risk, and to put yourself at risk requires courage, and courage is the masthead of strength. There is no handbook on how to cry or how to love. We just have to figure these things out, which for some of us just isn't that easy and can force us into uncomfortable places that we are not fortified enough for. It's for this reason that I think Jotaro has such a high opinion of Koichi. He's a character who is constantly taking personal risks during fights, putting one foot in front of the other in an attempt to make positive change. Jotaro looks upon Koichi with such respect because he does not fear vulnerability in the same way that Jotaro does. His soul is incredibly open to change and growth, as seen by his evolving stand echoes. Koichi's friendship with Jotaro is a strong commentary on the regret of unspoken words. Koichi's nature bears a shocking resemblance to that of Kakyoin, his cool head and strategic nature acting as a perfect balance against Jotaro's brute force. Kakyoin died without Jotaro ever telling him how much of a reliable friend he was. I'm sure he would give anything to see Kakyoin again and let him know how much of an irreplaceable friend he truly was. Jotaro's out-of-character compliments towards Koichi is this regret manifested into words, his refusal to make that same mistake again. This is where Jotaro's preference of action over words is so damaging to him. Where actions are encoded with so much more intention, they come with the cost of time. Words are an instant and effortless way to convey your feelings and gratification. Jotaro has so much to say, yet only so much time to show those around him how he thinks and feels through action. This refusal to use words is where Jotaro reaches that emotional bottleneck. It's the same bottleneck that triggered a landslide of complications in his family life. As he continues his work combating stand users internationally, his distance between himself and his family grows and grows. This family was meant to be his attempt at normality, but the lack of engagement with his trauma and emotions have kept him locked tight in the role of stoic protector, the knight at the gate, while those he wants to protect sit deep within the castle. His relationship with his daughter Jolene was especially strained by this distance. Ironically, Jotaro's behaviour was an exact mimic of what his father had done to himself and his mother Holly. This is yet another example of how, despite Jotaro's language of care being that of action, he has created an environment in which he is too distant for his actions to have any kind of meaningful impact on his daughter. While he's been able to shield her from the Joestar curse, he has unknowingly been fueling another curse, that of generational trauma. The events of Stone Ocean would put Jotaro's life on the line countless numbers of times, with himself genuinely believing in his own demise during his fight with John Gallier and Whitesnake.
これってそんな。
お前のことはいつだって大切に思っていた。
It's these moments that have forced Jotaro to come to terms with the idea of his own loss. His friends have left him so much, but what is it that he's leaving for everyone else? If Jotaro refuses to open up before his death, then the hopes, dreams and will of Iggy, Avdo, Kakyoin, Joseph and everybody else who he carries with him in his isolation will become dust along with himself. And above all of this, he will die with Jolene always believing that Jotaro never cared for her. It's so important to communicate your love as much as possible. If you were to vanish tomorrow, would those around you know how much you care about them? Would the legacies of the people you no longer have still burn bright within the hearts of others? Or even better yet, if someone you loved were to vanish, could you earnestly say that you made sure they knew how much you cared about them? That's why it's so crucial to not only care for those around us, but also to be conscious about how our love language translates to them. You may be signalling that you treasure them, but are these signals that they can even register? Be clear, be forward, use your words. Some people don't need a flashy display of loyalty. Sometimes they just want to hear the words, "I love you." The conclusion of Stone Ocean was a bittersweet summary of both Jotaro's ultimate love and ultimate regret. Choosing his daughter over his opportunity to save the entire universe was an amazing statement to how much Jotaro truly cares about her, and also a testament to him finally overcoming his distant and duty-bound nature. The biggest shame is that it was only in Jotaro's final moments that he decided to show Jolene how much he really cares about her. A final act that symbolises his pent-up regret withholding his true emotions of those closest to him. Stop running away from those feelings. It shouldn't take death's door for you to be able to find the strength to tell people how you really feel. We are all impermanent, so don't waste time building walls, where you could spend that time building bridges instead. Thank you very much for watching until now. I will admit I think the whole video is an over-analysis of Jotaro's character, but honestly that's kind of my favourite thing about it. When you look at characters you really love, you can analyse them to a point where you've almost created sentience for them in your head. You give them thoughts, meaning and purpose behind their story. Humanising the behaviour of these characters is a way of bringing them closer to ourselves, and as such we can relate to them on a far more personal level, making it easier to marry up our own issues with theirs. I'll probably end up doing this again and again to the point where people might say I'm reaching, but I'm not really bothered. If headcanons and your own conclusions bring you closer to a character that brings you comfort and guidance, then no one has any right to take that away from you. Make sure you let those around you know how much they mean to you, because there are people out there who would give up the universe for the same opportunity.